So good afternoon, everybody from India, and a good morning to colleagues joining us from Mozambique and further afield. I am Dr. Bidisha Bhattacharya, Senior Research Consultant at the Chintan Research Foundation, and it is my privilege to serve as your moderator today. Welcome to this important dialogue, Bridging Continents, Charting a New India-Mozambique Economic Future. We are especially honored to welcome His Excellency, Mr. Antonio, Secretary of State for Trade, Ministry of Economy, Mozambique, who will kindly be joining us for the opening session. Before we begin, just a few practical notes. Today's session will run for around 40 to 45 minutes. We encourage you to share your questions through the Q&A box, and we will aim to take some of them towards the end. Before we get to the discussion, the panel discussions, it's important to set the context of why are we all here today. So over the past 2 decades, India and Mozambique's relationship has expanded far beyond trade in raw materials, in agriculture. And today, India stands as one of Mozambique's most significant economic partners. From natural gas in the Rovuma Basin to pharmaceuticals, agribusiness, digital technology, and infrastructure. Yet this partnership is not without challenges. There are governance gaps, there are security issues, and the pressing need to align growth with sustainability and meaningful community participation. This webinar is therefore an opportunity to reflect together on how India-Mozambique economic ties can evolve to become more inclusive and equitable, the role of governance, transparency, and environmental priorities in shaping that future, and especially how people-to-people connections can complement government and business partnerships. So without further ado, may I first invite Mr. Shishir Priyadarshi, President of the Chintan Research Foundation, to deliver his comments, his address, and set the stage for today's discussion.
Thank you so much, Bidisha. And listen, this is just a matter of protocol, but I need to check whether both my audio and video are fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. They are fine.
Perfect, Bidisha. So let me add my own voice to yours in warmly welcoming friends from Mozambique. At least I can claim to have had the both privilege and pleasure of having visited Mozambique, basically because of the 20-odd years that I spent in Geneva looking at the World Trade Organization issues relating to developing countries. I've actually had 2 visits to Mozambique. And I must admit that the one thing that strikes out and remains a memory for me has been the warmth and friendliness of the people I've interacted with there. And therefore, I'm genuinely delighted that CRF, which is the Chintan Research Foundation, under Bidisha, took this lead to have a dialogue about the India-Mozambique relations, looking ahead, the merging of 2 continents. Look, a lot can be said about the historical construct of the relationships between the 2 countries. It's not recent, and easily a few centuries old. I don't think the Indian Ocean has ever been a barrier to either the movement of people or trade or cultural exchanges. In fact, we even share, I would say, struggles against colonialism. And I think that together has woven a natural fabric of friendship. But if I look in the recent maybe 10-odd years, then 3 or 4 areas certainly stand out in terms of the cooperation between India and Mozambique. Energy security and natural resources, extremely important. There has been significant Indian investment in Mozambique's coal and gas sectors. More can be done. The second area is obviously agricultural cooperation. And I think where Mozambique is an important contributor to India's food security objectives through pulses cultivation. The third, again, very, very important, has been maritime security and defense collaboration. The two countries share exactly the same vision about safe sea lanes in the Indian Ocean. And clearly, of course, the people-to-people exchanges, both through the diaspora and culture. But with that in mind, and that's where I'd love to share my own thoughts about this dialogue, which I feel is the start of some work that we in CRF want to do with our partners in Mozambique. And that is, we very much want to build track 1.5 diplomatic channel through, both think tanks in Mozambique and by having the involvement of government. Track one diplomacy obviously has a lot of advantages, just like track two diplomacy also does. But I think this combination where you create a hybrid space enabling both officials and non-officials to meet, I think it offers a particularly powerful tool because one, I think it allows the generation of policy recommendations which are not just theoretical. It's easy for think tanks across both sides to think what should be an ideal scenario. But the minute you involve senior government functionaries, then those very same theoretical recommendations can be couched in ground world reality. Also, I think, if you have a track 1.5 diplomacy, then you can try and build a consensus or at least gauge the possibility of consensus on sensitive issues. And that too becomes a very important feedback to government machinery on both sides. And then thirdly, merely by ensuring that you have representatives from business, academia, and civil society in these dialogues, you're obviously contributing to problem solving. So I will, just as I said, add a very, very warm welcome. But I do want to leave 2 or 3 specific suggestions to this August gathering, to people who are joining in or people who listen in, and to people who will kind of gradually become part of this group. The first is, I think we should seriously consider the establishment of a joint policy dialogue forum. A structured India-Mozambique dialogue forum anchored by think tanks on both sides, but involving government observers could meet periodically. And obviously, the discussions could focus on energy security, food security, maritime cooperation, I would say even digital connectivity. So that's that I would leave on the table as the first concrete recommendation. The second, and while webinars or exchanges are very important, but I think we should work towards having academic exchanges and joint research. Think tanks and universities on both sides could set up collaborative programs. We could, to begin with, and I say that only because CRF is focused on it. We could initially take up areas such as climate adaptation, renewable energy, and sustainable agriculture, and then try and do some work together, which brings in, the expertise on both sides and leads to possible joint work. And a third point is absolutely essential. A Track 1.5 platform could serve as a bridge between policymakers. I think, if we could have roundtables which involve investors, industry chambers, and government, it would obviously be very useful. So, with these, let me conclude by reiterating what I said at the beginning. I think the relations are strong. Any exchange between, think tanks and government on both sides will obviously make the relationship stronger because there is a shared commitment to sustainable development. There's a shared commitment towards the importance both countries give to the Indian Ocean. And clearly, there is diaspora on both sides, whose creativity and dynamism can be harvested. So with these words, once again, let me welcome all the participants and the speakers and hand the floor back to our moderator, who I know has put in a lot of work and effort into putting this together. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, sir, for your for your insights specifically, and also for so eloquently framing the themes that will guide our conversation. We would sort of, without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce our distinguished panel who bring deep expertise from both Mozambique and India. Together, they will help us explore how trade, how investment and governance can deepen India-Mozambique relations while ensuring they remain sustainable and inclusive. To begin, let me welcome Ms. Tatiana Mata. Ms. Mata is a Mozambican agricultural economist and founder of the EIM Group. With more than 24 years of experience across Southern Africa, she has specialized in agribusiness, market systems development, inclusive finance, and international trade, particularly in advancing Mozambique's presence in regional EU and US markets. She's also deeply engaged in fostering dialogue between the public and private sectors. Currently, she serves as the president of the Mozambique Netherlands Chamber of Commerce, chair of the General Assembly of 𝐴𝐵, vice president of FEM, and vice president of the Trade and Services Division at CTA. Tatiana will reflect on trade and investment trends and the role of agribusiness in building sustainable economic ties. Over to you, Ms. Mata. Is there some network connectivity issue? All right, we for the time being, then we move on to the next speaker, and then Ms. Mata can join us later on, if that's all right with the panel. We would also like to introduce, it's my pleasure to introduce, in fact, Dr. Michael Sambo. Dr. Sambo is an economist and lecturer with more than 13 years of professional experience in research, governance, and development. His work covers economic policy, governance challenges, and community engagement. Alongside his academic contributions as a teacher and trainer, he holds an honors degree in economics from Eduardo Mondlane University and a master's in development studies specializing in social policy and for development from Erasmus University in Rotterdam. Dr. Sambo will help us think about governance, transparency, and community engagement in economic partnerships. Over to you, Dr. Sambo.
Thank you very much. Good morning, Bidisha. I hope I pronounced well your name. And good morning, to everyone else. Oh, sorry. Good afternoon to everyone in India. And good morning to Professor Nuvunga here in Mozambique and everyone else who is watching from Mozambique. Well, I prepared some keynote. I hope they will bring a bit of insights for this discussion, and I will share if that's okay. Moderator, can I?
Yes. So would you like to share your screen?
Yes, I can share the screen just for a slide presentation on what I prepare about the topic.
Sure.
Thank you. So one more time, thank you, and thank you so much for the invitation. I was invited to the debate and Professor Nuvunga, and I appreciate so much. Can you hear me? Yes, okay.
Yeah, we can hear you. We can hear you.
Thank you. So I will bring a bit of reflection. I believe most of it has been spoken already, but just to contribute to this discussion, to start with, an overview on economic relations, as the first speaker already said or introduced, and I appreciate for that introduction. The Mozambique-India relations are dated from long ago, and just for a record, Mozambique has a very big population of Indians who have been here since the colonial time. Some even say that, well, they have been here before the colonialism also. But Mozambique is one of the top 5 trading partners of Mozambique, or I mean India, which is already very good achievement. And the growth of the bilateral trade has been remarkable since 2000 up to today. And the bilateral trade moved from $200 million in 2001 to over $3 billion in 2022. Of course, the trade structure remains heavily imbalanced, particularly with Mozambique exporting raw commodities and importing refined products and manufactured goods. Perhaps this is where some of the problems for Mozambique as one of the beneficiary countries start. If we look at the data from the Bank of Mozambique, we can see that the general balance of trade always displays this trend, which are trade deficit for Mozambique. And when we look also for the bilateral trade between Mozambique and India, the trade seems to have, or Mozambique seems to have a superávit from the data of Banco de Mozambique. However, this is not true when we look at the Comtrade data or also from other sources, including, I believe, also the Indian data. So meaning there are some disparity in data which can be probably related to how the trade is done, in this case through some of the fiscal paradise, if I can say so. In bilateral trade, there are some remarkable aspects that can be noted. The peak bilateral trade was registered between 2014 to 15, where we registered about $2.4 billion between the two countries, and later it went down, but that was due to commodity prices correction. In terms of foreign direct investment as well, it has been remarkable, about $10 billion that is the investment from India in Mozambique, with more than 100 companies or firms from India operating in Mozambique. And apart from that, there is also the facilities for credit that the Exim Bank of India has granted to Mozambique. It was about $772 million dated from August 2020, which of course is a great opportunity for Mozambique to cope with the development and demand. But of course, it also causes some challenges in terms of management and how this money will or not be applied for the sake of development. In terms of gas exploration also, in the project from Total, or one of the, or some of the Indian companies have a great share, running for about 30% of it from the 20 billion estimated worthy of the project, which is also remarkable. And of course, it just agrees with the first speaker that there is a great share in terms of energy. That is apart from the coal exploration in Turkey and so on. Foreign direct investment from India. The major Indian investment in Mozambique has been mainly into mining of coal, gas, and aging sands as well. In agriculture, there is cashew, pulse, and sesame that some of the Indian companies have been investing, and these products are all exported in energy sources as well, or energy sector as well as pharmacy. Those are the major areas that there is investment. Of course, there is also a lot of agricultural investment, but cannot compare. Just running. In terms of companies, there are some remarkable, like in terms of technology, particularly vehicles. We have the Tata Group in the sector of transport, trucks, and logistics. And there is the ONGC Videsh as well in oil India, in gas exploitation in 𝐒𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐫𝐢, Jindal Steel and Power in coal mining, Tet Province, pharma firms, which are providing affordable medicine in Mozambique, but of course also limited in terms of local manufacturing, technology transfer. The positive aspect there is that this corporation is also providing for Mozambique cheap access to both medicine and technology, which is a very good achievement. However, in terms of also macro level, profits often are repatriated with weak local value addition and local retention as well. So looking at impact of the trade relations or the economic relations, to be more broad, specifically, at national level, of course, we have a huge contribution to the GDP in Mozambique, which is a very good and positive aspect. When it comes to local level, where most of the companies are operating, the impact are a bit mixed. In the coal mining, for example, in Tete, there are lots of displacements for the community and environmental stresses as well. So in most cases, you find conflict between people and the company. That is one drawback, but which can also be worked at. In gas sector in 𝐒𝐫𝐢𝐬𝐫𝐢, for example, which is a new sector, so to say, local communities have been feeling excluded from the benefits. And in most cases, the companies either bring workers from their own country, or they also hire high-skilled from international or from the capital. And the local communities normally tend to be excluded. And due to that, in most cases, there are also conflicts in the local regions where there is the exploitation of resources, which is an issue to be tackled as well. In agriculture, Indian farms export pulse, cashew, but farmers in most cases remain poor because they are not so much involved in the chain, just as ordinary workers. So the benefits for the farmers, in this case, local Mozambican farmers, tends to be very moderate to low. This shows that the resource, the resource cash dilemma, wealth is being created, but in most cases, it's not being equitably shared between, in this case, the investor and the ones who are supposed to be beneficiaries, in this case, the communities, the direct communities involved. So given all that situation, there are some aspects that are good to also reflect when we are discussing these critical aspects, particularly related to people and the relationships in general, as the partnership between the two countries grows. Some of the lessons that we can bring forward, for example, is that the Mozambique risks to become only the raw material colony, which is what actually already happened before. But when we are growing into win-win relationships, which is one of the advocated topics in the South-South cooperation, it's important to change this role and, of course, the Mozambican government has a great role to play on that. Also, India benefits from the importing cheap raw resources and exporting value-added goods to Mozambique, which in part is good to Mozambique. It's true that Mozambique has to develop its own industry, but perhaps there are also room for more cooperation in terms of technology transfer, cooperation in terms of more development also for the receiving country in this case. There are also challenges that Mozambique must renegotiate terms to ensure more benefits like technology transfer, processing industries rather than just exporting the raw materials, and local employment conditions as well to ensure that the locals, the people, have more benefits from the partnership and the economic relations that have been established. So given that, one of the action points should be that Mozambique should not just have foreign companies, not only Indian. This is important to notice that it's not only in the relationship with India, but as we are talking about India, this also falls into this category. So it's important for the Mozambican government to also plan or demand partnerships that build national capacity, both at national and local level, whether it is through training, engagement, and capacity building, or even into other ways of partnering. So how can Mozambique take more benefits or have more benefits of the partnership? Some thoughts include industrialization, which is more of national effort, but which can also be coordinated effort with a partner, in this case, India. For example, in the cashew nut industry, in agro-processing in different areas, and gas to power industries in Mozambique, rather than having just a raw material export or exporting partner. A fair contract should be ensured as well, reviewing investment agreements to increase revenue retention in the country, maximizing the benefits also for Mozambique. Local content policies require Indian investors to employ more Mozambicans and source locally, apart from the few that can, of course, always join, but it's always important to also ensure that local and the international are working hand in hand and with similar conditions, because in most cases, there is a huge discrepancy, particularly in terms of benefits like salaries and conditions that are created in most of the companies. People-centered approach is one of the aspects that the government should also focus in this case, ensuring communities in 𝐶𝐬𝐲, Tete, and Nampula share benefits via social infrastructure, such as schools, health centers, and so on. This is for the broad community, apart from those that are directly employed where there is exploration, because where there is plans of exploration or companies, foreign companies operating in Mozambique, in most cases, they are surrounded by very poor communities with lacking of lots of just the basic resources and lots of needs that need to be tackled. In conclusion, the Indian-Mozambique partnership has a great potential to develop both countries, serve both countries, and maximize development in both countries. Mozambique, in this case, as being one of the as being the receiving country and one of the poorest countries, yes, with lots of resources that are useful to benefit India and other partners. It's very important that these partnerships have also potential to benefit Mozambique, both strategically and in terms of what is the, in this case, the object of partnership or investment. Yet, to ensure this benefit, of course, Mozambique needs to make reforms. If reforms are not made, it risks only to become raw material exporter. And in this case, there will be no much of differences between the current partnerships that are being established in terms of how people will see it, but it will be similar as what happened during the colonial time. So it's very important to have, for both countries to have a great reflection in terms of this aspect. In strategic policy, the relationship can serve as a tool for national development in Mozambique, but as well as contributing to India and to other partners, not a dependency relationship. In this case, it's more a need of working as equal partners, even though there is inequality at the very beginning. So Mozambique must also negotiate as a sovereign nation, prioritizing its people first, rather than just business, as it may be perceived by the people who share less or little benefit in most of the partnerships that are being made between the government and other governments. So thank you. These are the few notes that I wanted to share, and part it might also contribute to the discussion as we will continue. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sambo. It was indeed a very insightful presentation, because as I will just reiterate the same statement again that I had made, that you would not only help us think about governance, but also transparency and community engagement and economic partnerships. And you exactly focused on that throughout the presentation. Thank you so much. And Mr. Priyadarshi, you had to say something. Sorry.
No, I was only adding my thanks. I thought that was a very comprehensive elaboration of both the historical trade trends and, gives a good opening about the future. So thank you. I mean, genuinely, thank you from my side too.
Thank you. We are also very delighted and honored to have His Excellency, the Secretary of State for Trade, Ministry of Economy, Mozambique. Welcome, sir. Thank you for taking out time to attend this webinar. We would now request you to deliver your address and give your insights about the India-Mozambique Economic Partnership.
Bom dia a todos. Hello, good morning, everyone. I just come to make a few introduction remarks, because we value so much the relationships between India and Mozambique. India and Mozambique share a common relationship since 1669, when the first Indian came our shores and established here in Mozambique, during the time that Goa and some other parts of India belongs to Portuguese. The first Indians came out. Myself, I'm a product of that. My grandfather was Indian. So I'm a product of this trade between India and Mozambique. India is the major export destination of Mozambique products. India is dominant on the agriculture commodities like pigeon peas and some other things. Cashew. Mozambique is one of the great importers of Indian products, especially the medicaments and some other things. So, and we have seen the last years this business increasing, and we cannot forget commodities like coal. We have a big companies there like Jindal, some other CRF are boosting the trade in that products. And now we as a government, we share within a preferential program of tariffs with India, that India has excluded 19% of the tariffs that the Mozambican products is excluded for in India markets. So we have a special trade for pigeon peas with the government of India. It allows to export to India more than 300,000 tons of that. We want to increase more, and that's why I'm dealing with right at the moment to organizing the Mozambican International Fair Trade. We call it FACIM. It commenced on Monday, but we launched it yesterday, and I left the meeting that we are dealing that just to discuss with you this shared vision of what we see between Mozambique and India connections, and we like to invite you all of India participation on this fair trade. We only have to let me say in Portuguese, it's better for us. We queremos ver. I received your ambassador last week. We'd like to see the India companies and the investors to take this opportunity and to lead on this side, because we cannot only look to the aspect that the Indian is the first on the first distance of our exporting, but we cannot see the Indians a massive presence in this fair trade. We'd like to see you guys there, because for us is there's no trade in Mozambique without putting India in the baskets, and we've seen the Chinese are coming so far, and we greet all of us want to trade with us, but India is a special place in these relationships with Mozambique, because these ties are so embedded in Mozambican history that we shared some culture in food. We say first time I went to India in 2013 in the governmental mission, and I see some cuisines, some spices that we see in Mozambique. I understand how much we are in some aspect. We are the same culture. We are the same people. They say money doesn't have borders, doesn't have race, doesn't have countries. But when you share some let me see, em português, quando nós partilhamos a mesma cultura, a mesma raça, digamos assim, a mesma miscigenação que Deus nos trouxe há mais de 3 séculos, é muito mais fácil fazer negócio quando estamos nesta plataforma. Por isso é que nós gostávamos de ver a Índia a liderar esta questão. Não basta só nós assistirmos a participação ou a dinamização em aqueles produtos que são básicos. Nós temos estado a fazer esta negociação com a Índia, naqueles que são os nossos commodities, que são mais procurados pela Índia há cerca de 15, 20 anos. Ou seja, tradicionalmente Moçambique exporta para a Índia castanha, exporta para a Índia feijão boer. Agora temos a questão do carvão que temos lá, mas nós gostávamos de ver as empresas indianas. Temos também uma massiva presença da Índia no setor da farmacêutica e no setor das viaturas, com as empresas como a Tata e Mahindra, com uma massiva implementação em Moçambique. Mas gostávamos de ver a Índia liderar também a transformação de Moçambique para uma economia de serviço, ou uma economia de produção, para uma economia industrial. A Índia tem uma história de vitória muito forte na transformação na sua economia própria, uma economia industrial. E nós gostávamos de ver os empresários indianos a tomarem liderança nesse aspecto. Temos visto alguns países como a China a massificarem a sua presença aqui no que toca ao processamento de produtos, e este é um dos desafios do governo, que é transformar, a partir dos próximos anos, nós começarmos a proibir a exportação da matéria-prima não processada, portanto, no raw material. Mas gostávamos que isso fosse feito também dando a oportunidade aos empresários indianos para poderem estar cá e destacar-se nessa matéria, e que isso seria, no final do dia, até no final das contas, uma espécie de continuar a tradição que a Índia tem nas relações comerciais que nós temos que tem com Moçambique. Portanto, isso ia também cimentar esta relação de
Your mic is off. Moderator. Your mic seems to be off. I see you're speaking, but your mic is off.
Oh, my bad. I believe we seem to have lost some network connectivity. I was requesting Professor Adriano and you if we can proceed with the next speaker. Would that be fine? Should we go ahead? All right. If I'm audible, I would now sort of, to broaden this conversation towards South-South cooperation. It is my pleasure to turn now to an Indian perspective to welcome Mr. Abhijit Mukhopadhyay. Mr. Mukhopadhyay, can you hear me? Sir, am I audible to you?
Yeah, I was transferred to the attendees in between.
So, sir, because we seem to have lost some connectivity, we are waiting for His Excellency to join in. But meanwhile, we'll get started with the next sort of speaking points. So I would like to welcome you, in this discussion. And just to give a brief overview about Mr. Mukhopadhyay, he's an economist and policy expert with more than 23 years of experience in macroeconomics, monetary and banking policy, trade and sustainability. His research and commentary appear regularly in academic journals, policy publications, and the media. His academic background includes a master's and an MPhil in economics from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi. Mr. Mukhopadhyay will be offering an Indian perspective on trade, investment, and how bilateral cooperation fits into the broader South-South partnerships. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, I have a very small presentation to make, but before that, Dr. Sambo, in fact, made most of the overviews and most of the broader macro trade data. He actually shared it. And then there is, after that, in fact, maybe there will be a repetition. But But I was thinking, while listening to his presentation, I was thinking that what different thing can I actually, put in here. Before I share my presentation, I just want to start with a small anecdote that in 2015, in fact, during third India-Africa Summit, which was held in India in New Delhi itself. And then I actually wrote one big India-Africa, I would say kind of a compendium. It was a compendium looking at mostly the trade angle, trade and investment, both those angles, and country by country. Then during that procedure, in fact, I went and met some of the African colleagues in the embassies, in different embassies, possibly, quite a few I met at that point of time. And then, of course, what Shishir sir started with, from the Indian perspective, it is quite almost for the past 7, 8, if not 10, 10 years, the idea is revolving around energy security and food security. So obviously these two issues are primarily in agenda in an average Indian policymaker's book. So, but then what does it translate into? That is the main thing. That actually translates into the kind of trade data that Professor Sambo was showing. So essentially, these are all, we are exporting a lot of raw material, and also not only raw material and minerals, and including coal, and then there are agricultural produces, and then that also very primary agricultural products, that kind of a thing. So then what I realized at that point of time, that if I see it from a very neutral and a very detached academic kind of a perspective, then obviously there is this, nations of Africa, generally speaking, they aspire to export more refined and finished good, rather than raw material, minerals, and primary agricultural products. So it is nothing new, because even India was at the same place, I think, somewhere around 20, 25 years ago. We have progressed quite a bit, there is no doubt about it, but we also want to go up the ladder. So for any nation, of course, just for the economic reason, it is not unfair. It is not at all unfair to aspire to be a refined and, kind of a, finished good, even not intermediate good, finished good. And once you attain that finished good exporter level, then you try to go up to the, I would say, high-tech and high-end goods. So that's the progression, that is how trade progresses in any country. So, that observation and that narrative, once again got reaffirmed, after seeing that that presentation. And he also made some, very important viewpoints. I am just quoting him, that Mozambique should not just host foreign companies, but demand partnerships that build national capacity. And also, Mozambique must negotiate as sovereign nation, prioritizing its people first. These are the aspirations, actually, I saw even almost 10 years back, and it is still there, and it will be very much there. I'll start from there. I think there, in fact, comes the role of what I would say development partnership. Then India already has a development cooperation model. That model, I am not saying that, we believe, we as Indians, we believe that it's a better model. It's a better model than the American model of charity, the ancient way of putting money as aid and grants and those kind of things, or the Chinese model of a very transactional kind of policy oriented, that, we want this and we want you to do this. But Indian model is slightly, Indian development cooperation model at least on paper, and definitely, on ground also, there has been a lot of developments, a lot of improvements have been made in the last 7-8 years that I know very well because I wrote a paper on that also. But then actually what happens there is that the host country is asked to put in the requirements or the agenda, first, and then India starts getting into the entire business. So that is how we look at the entire development cooperation. I think that is very much relevant and very much crucial, with this aspiration in the background. So of course, if we have to meet this aspiration, which is coming from the colleagues from Mozambique also, then I think that development cooperation has to be taken forward. Indian model of development cooperation has to be taken forward and fine-tuned maybe, and probably customized according to the needs of an individual nation. That is where actually we are. But saying that, I'll just very briefly, I'll just, there are a lot of, I would say, repetition will be there, but still I'll just go there. Now, so, one thing is that, of course, as other speakers actually mentioned that, we with Mozambique and with other nations of Africa, India has hundreds of years of, relationship, but, at a very diplomatic and a formal level, this is a celebration of a 50 years of friendship, going along the golden jubilee of relationship. That what we can say that, in 2025, we are marking the golden jubilee of the diplomatic relationship. 5 decades of friendship, cooperation, and strategic alignment, and for the obvious reasons that that entire Indian Ocean perspective is also there. But then multifaceted relationship, it is not only economic or trade, but there is a political, defense, cultural, and other kind of developmental cooperation. Those aspects are also involved there. Then of course these are the broad. I am not once again the entirely putting in the just repeating the entire thing, but rather than that, what I will ask everybody to concentrate is that India's import, this is what the point with which actually I started beginning. The coal briquettes, these are top 5, top 5 of India's imports. Coal briquette is there, that pigeon peas and other legumes, gemstones, iron and steel scrap and oil. These are the top 5. And Mozambique's import, on the other hand, are from India are pharma products, and then diesel and other refined fuels, and then cereals, mainly non-basmati rice, machinery, small compared to the others, but still substantial, and vehicles. And these are all very important. Possibly we can get into. And then investment also, it has been mentioned. Rovuma area 1 LNG, that ONGC, Bidisha and BPCL, and then combined 30% stake, and then Jindal's Vulcan unit, ICVL consortium in coal in the entire Meghalaya corridor and other places, titanium and rubies, and lines of credit. Of course, there is a good lines of credits are there. AFCONs and rights are actually leading the execution there. Now, this is where actually I rather want to concentrate, for the rest of my time. That is, I believe that apart from this, whatever I have, these were my initial thoughts, sector-wise. But rather than that, even at the industry level, I would say that possibly where there is a history, there is a legacy, 2 sectors where actually there can be direct I would say partnership and participation are pharmaceuticals and fertilizer. There is already something existing, there, then the scale, it has to be scaled up, somewhere it has to be scaled up. And then, of course, there are other things like education and healthcare. Healthcare is mentioned here, of course. Now, and why not even tourism and travel? When actually we start by saying that, there has to be people to people contact, then obviously even something like tourism and travel has to be prioritized somewhere in the region. And then, of course, then the broader kind of things are that, agricultural agro processing. I am possibly somehow repeating what Dr. Sambo was trying to tell, that particularly in the agro processing section, there has to be tech transfer and joint ventures. That there is a huge possibility. I believe so. Healthcare and pharma, once again, then there can be scaling up of manufacturing, joint manufacturing, putting up more infrastructure. These are these are onto the softer side of the Indian, skill development and other kind of thing. But even in education, there can be, different kind of digitization, not only, digital exchanges, but also, and not just, training or something like that, but also, one can bring in the private players to scale it up. When we are talking about things like education and health, infrastructure, utilities, of course, those kind of things are there. We have already talked about renewable energy, IT, of course, that when we talk about tech, then of course there is information technology, then entire IT thing, everything is there. And of course, often underrated, even in our own country, that the entire blue economy, where in fact there can be joint fishing and, port development. And the last one is definitely not the least, but very important, which is actually the MSMEs and women's empowerment. In fact, Dr. Sambo was talking about employment. Now, employment, it's a problem. It's a universal problem now. If the companies have to be profitable, then there has to be some tech element to it. But once you start putting in a lot of tech into your entire production process, then the employment generation goes into the lower side. So it's a conundrum that that the development has posed in the last one and a half decade for many of the countries, and India and Mozambique, they are no exception, because it's a big kind of an issue even within our domestic economy. But I believe that given the kind of size of MSMEs that we have, and then the kind of smaller and medium enterprises which are operating in Mozambique also, there can be a lot of I believe that partnership, and then some cooperation, and then in a typical way exchanging notes, even at policy level, that can also help. Before finishing off, something that actually occurred to my mind during the discussion is that ultimately when we are negotiating the entire American tariffs, world over, and then now everybody has to think about the base, or the not only the scale of the operation, but also the base of operation. Which country, which base somebody is operating, or one country is operating, may become very important in the next decade. This kind of shenanigans, trade shenanigans, will keep going on. In my belief, at least for the next 5 to 7 years. Trump or no Trump. That is my own feeling. But then if that happens, then obviously there will be different kind of where actually we'll be having a situation where we have to, not only India, even many other countries have to think about putting up serious production facilities, not only within the domestic economy, but also at some other places. There might be an intersection, there might be an intersection of interest, if I may say so, within the this entire India-Mozambique relationship. But I would stop here and then let it be, and then whenever the question answer session comes, we'll talk about it.
Thank you so much, sir. This was indeed an insightful presentation, specifically from the Indian perspective. We do have some imperative questions that have been raised by the attendees, and I do have Dr. Sambo and also Mr. Mukhopadhyay here, who could throw some light on this area. And even so, Professor Nuvunga, Professor Adriano, I have to introduce him because he's been greatly helpful throughout organizing this webinar, bringing in the right kind of people, the right kind of speakers. Just to give a brief idea about him, Professor Adriano, he's a leading scholar and human rights activist in Mozambique and across Africa. He's the director of CDD, and chairs both the Mozambique Human Rights Defenders Network and the Southern Defenders. Internationally, he serves as deputy chair of the Global Advisory Board of Oxfam Novib's Fair for All program. And he's recognized as one of Africa's 100 most influential voices in 2022 and one of its 100 iconic leaders in 2023. He's a highly respected policy thinker who holds a PhD in development studies from Erasmus University, and his most recent book examines extractive sector governance and violent conflict in Mozambique. I do have a few questions. One, the first I would like to ask Dr. Sambo. Sir, you have studied governance and transparency. And in the context of rising foreign investments in Mozambique, what mechanisms do you believe are most critical to ensure accountability and prevent the so-called resource curse?
Thank you so much. I think the question is very interesting, but I don't know if I captured it well. If you can please just repeat so that I captured it well, please, if you don't mind.
Absolutely, no problem. So since you have broadly you've researched extensively on governance and transparency, my question was that in the context of rising foreign investments in Mozambique, what kind of mechanisms do you believe can be the most crucial or critical to ensure accountability and prevent the so-called resource impediments or resource curse, as you would like to call it?
Okay, thank you so much. Well, in fact, I have seen or I have studied a bit on governance and transparency, but that has not been my focus of study. So still, I will just comment on that. To raise accountability and prevent resource curses, the two aspects are relatively way different. The resource curse in one side, the accountability in the other. In terms of accountability, there has been effort from ITIE, the International Transparency Mechanism, which has been introduced around 2012 or so in Mozambique. But still, they are struggling for the contracts to be published, all these agreements to be well published, so that the civil society organizations and the general public can scrutinize what is being agreed between the government and other governments. And I think that is a crucial point. If other governments that are signing partnership agreements or whether it's commercial agreements have this liberty to publish, of course, it can still reach to Mozambican civil society, which is more and more capacitated or educated to also research and find all this information, which is crucial for the general public, civil society organizations, and activists to proactively well-informed, discuss with the government in terms of which policy alternatives could be put in order to maximize the benefits for the community. About the resource curve, this is another topic, as I was mentioning, because it will depend mostly on economic diversification. If we are to concentrate the economy only in raw material extraction, and particularly in the gas booming industry, then of course, we will be running high risk of the resource curve problem. But this is a bit different, as I was mentioning. I was trying to separate the issue of transparency, which is very important for the participation of local communities and the general public, as well as civil society organizations, and the resource cuts, which can be a matter of policy that the government has to put in place, and in case there is challenges for the government and the other partnering governments can notice that, okay, these may not lead into what is good for both countries. Of course, it's also necessary for there to be an advice in terms of peer-to-peer in the government bodies. So that is what I would just comment on your question, so to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sambo. And my next question before we move to the closing remarks would be to Mr. Mukhopadhyay. Sir, from the Indian perspective, where do you see the next big opportunities? I mean, although you have definitely thrown light on this area, but specifically the next big opportunities for India, Mozambique trade and investment beyond the natural resources. And how can India's development cooperation model, for instance, lines of credit, capacity building, can be made more impactful, in your opinion?
Of course, it can be, because what I believe that regarding Africa, once again, I'm sharing the experience 10 years back that at that point of time, there was a huge buzz that the entire African continent is going to be the next growth engine, for the simple reason that there will be a huge demographic shift. And there is a huge probability that there will be emergence of another middle class, the things that used to be said about China and India at one point of time, around 20-25 years back. The same thing as used to be said, 10 years back about Africa. So as a result, the first thing that comes into mind is something like FMCG, the fast moving consumption goods sector, something which will get sold too much. And then there are countries, including Nigeria, which is a neighbor of Mozambique. So obviously, sorry, not Tanzania, I think. And even, Nigeria, and there are other kind of places in the entire continent, and including Mozambique, I think there is a huge probability that buzz has somehow subsided a little bit, but I am still a firm believer that next wave of economic growth and development is going to come from the African nations. There is no doubt about it. And the countries which are far-sighted enough to be present there will benefit the most in the next 30 to 40 years. There is no doubt about it. And India should not lose that opportunity. That is my broad submission will be that. And building upon that, what I was trying to say is that obviously, instead of putting up facilities, which other countries do with us, the other big countries they do with us, they just put in some assembling kind of, assembling kind of facilities and other kind of things. Instead of doing that, what we can do is that we can develop this entire India-Mozambique partnership into a more fruitful and more long-term economic partnership in such a way so that it benefits both the countries, because there are scopes, where actually I think I talked about pharma and fertilizer, but even there are other places also. There can be other sectors, which can be even, why not textile? Textile, actually Mozambique has good amount of textile sector. So obviously, Indian companies can go there and then utilize some of the advantageous factor in the cost of production angle. So obviously those kind of things. And then another, the last point that I would make, that as I was trying to say that the things like lines of credit should be customized. Why I am saying so? Simply because of the fact that lines of credit actually contains the clause that somewhere around normally, 75% of the inputs required have to be acquired from Indian resources. There are exceptions. Of course, there are a certain amount of exceptions. When I was trying to say customize, what actually Dr. Sambo was trying to say, I also, to a large extent, I agree to that. That ultimately, it has to be customized. That kind of one size fits all kind of model may not be beneficial, but it's a very good model. It's a very time tested and very good model that India has already employed in mostly in our neighborhood, and also, and then secondly in the African nations. So obviously, why can't we take it to the second level? That preparation needs to be started right now, in my opinion. And it is very difficult to say which are the sectors that one pinpoint that needs some amount of research and some amount of, pondering, and getting into deep details. But I think this should be the broad direction. That is what my feeling is.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Before we conclude, it would be my honor to invite Professor Adriano, Director of CDD, to share the closing remarks. Sir, over to you. Professor Adriano, we would like to invite you for the closing remarks.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I apologize for the technical challenge that I've been facing.
No worries, sir. No worries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, as we come to the close of this important conversation, allow me to express my deep gratitude to all speakers, panelists, the honorables that opened our discussion today, and participants who have enriched today's dialogue with such clarity, evidence, and conviction. What we have seen in our exchanges is that the India-Mozambique relationship has indeed entered a new and strategic phase. It is no longer only about the exchange of goods, cashew for pharmaceuticals, coal for machinery, but about how both nations can work together in shaping sustainable development pathways. Several themes stand out clearly following our discussions today. First, the opportunities. India is not only a key investor in Mozambique's energy, healthy, agriculture, and technology sectors, but also a partner in capacity building, knowledge transfer, and South-South cooperation. Second, the challenges, the governance deficits, the debt burden. Mozambique's debt is colossal. The ongoing crisis in Mozambique's Cabo Delgado, which was once seen as a game changer, the El Dorado of Mozambique. But for what we see, it is clearly going through challenges. And the urgent call to embed transparency, equity, and human rights in all our economic partnerships. Third, the future direction. If this relationship is to be transformative, it must be rooted in the principles of sustainability, inclusion, and local ownership. This means investments that do not just extract resources, but empower people. It means trade that builds markets while also strengthening communities. And it means cooperation that goes beyond elites to embrace youth, women, and civil society voices. Colleagues, as we leave this webinar, let us carry forward the understanding that India-Mozambique cooperation is not only about economic statistics. It's about building a shared future of dignity, justice, and prosperity. If done right, this partnership can be a model of what South cooperation truly stands for, which is solidarity, mutual respect, and development with people at the center of all what we do. I thank you all once again, and I hope that the ideas shared here will continue to guide our collective efforts in making the India-Mozambique partnership both stronger and more equitable in years to come. I thank you. Obrigado.
Bidisha, unmute yourself.
Yes. Obrigado, Professor Adriano, and thank you on behalf of CRF. I extend our sincere thanks to all the speakers, all the participants, India, Mozambique, and around the world, especially sincere thanks to His Excellency. Also, a big thank you to Gabriel. I don't see him on the call right now, but please do convey my thanks to him. He's been highly helpful in sort of, bringing all the speakers and the timings and connecting, everybody in place. And Anton is here. Thank you, Anton, for, that meeting discussion that we've had where you gave this idea and for introducing Professor Adriano to us and taking this sort of discussion forward. And yes, so we hope that this conversation sparks new collaborations and ideas to shape a fair, sustainable, and prosperous India-Mozambique economic partnership. Thank you once again, and we look forward to staying connected. Wishing you all a very, very good day. Thank you.